Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons, and I have the great pleasure of having the opportunity to sit down with Randy Haffling, who is the Assistant Director of Facilities, Grounds, and Logistics. Did I get that right? Did I miss something?
You did. Yes.
Perfect. I got it right. Good. Randy and I have known each other for a long time, actually. I think we met a number of years ago. And in fact, Randy is at a university, used to be a college until 2021. That's right up the street from me. And I spent a lot of I think I shared this with you a couple of weeks ago when we got together. I spent a lot of my youth when I was a county agent here in Northampton County. I spent a lot of time just wandering your campus, taking photographs because it's such a beautiful property. The buildings are old. I'm going to let you kind of get into some of the Moravian history, but I did a little homework, and quite honestly, I didn't realize that you're 280 years old as an educational institution, and really started out as a seminary school back in the 1740s. Am I close?
Correct. Yeah. It started with Moravians coming here, settled Bethlehem in 1741, and started the school the next year. Ironically, it was a bishop's daughter. She was 16 years old. She said, I want to start a school to educate other girls. And it actually started the women's seminary and eventually evolved into the college. And so we like to, I'd say, brag a little bit that we're the oldest college of higher education for women in the country.
So it started in the 1740s, trying to educate women. That's fascinating. I had no idea.
Well, as our president Grigsby likes to say, even now in some parts of the world, it's rare, it's unique or revolutionary to have education for women. But the thought process for the Moravians back then was, who educates the children? The mothers. So educating the women made perfect sense. But given a campus that we're that old, we also have, of course, buildings that go back to nearly then, but also we have a couple trees on campus that date around that time.
Really?
We have an English elm that we had checked by Champion Tree, and it's actually dated to about 200 years old, and it's the largest known in the state, and they put it on the National Register. So we have that, and actually we had lightning protection put in to protect it just because of its importance on campus.
You did a whole, I'm going to get into this, and give me some time here, but you did a whole tree survey, which I found fascinating. Let me get back into some of the history of the school, though. So you ultimately got into Bethlehem, Pennsylvania around 1750 out of bouncing around in the eastern PA, Philadelphia area. I think I found you were in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. So you went from Nazareth to Bethlehem, which is obviously rather biblical in its own sense. But those of us who live in this area, know these towns and area. But you got into Bethlehem on the current campus in the 1750s. So this campus that anybody can come and see has been around since the mid 1700s. And you're telling me that there's actually some trees surviving from that. That's actually fascinating and amazing. Tell me about, let me talk about you first. What's your background? How did you get into this industry? Did you go to school for any of this? And I know you were working in turf for a while.
Yeah. So a person of my vintage, I was one of those kids that went out and started mowing for the next door neighbor.
We all did that.
Yeah. 12 years old. And did that, and then started my own landscaping business out of high school. But it was a few years out of high school that I realized, you know what, I can do better than this, and realized you can go to school to be a landscaper.
Yeah.
So went to community college, got an associate's degree there, and then transferred to Del Val College.
Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
Yep, got my bachelor's there and went out and then continued with my landscape company. Eventually bounced around to design build companies got quite a bit of experience, doing some high-end residential work, North Jersey. And then I landed at Brickman when it was Brickman, and
Right.
New Jersey for about 4 years. And the clients had crossed the gamut. I had high-end residential, hotels, and military base. So best thing with Brickman, if anybody else that's listening has worked for Brickman, you get quite education there. You learn how to multitask and learn a lot. So then I came to apply for Moravian, because the one thing that I was yearning for, I said to my wife, is I'd love to take care of one place, that I could get it there every day and just build on what I did the day before. And the opportunity opened for here. I interviewed and was fortunate, almost 14 years ago to get the job here that I have. And it doesn't seem like work, it's just
Good. That's what work should be, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about the campus. How big is Moravian's campus here in Bethlehem?
Roughly 100 acres. It's split between two campuses, South Campus, which is the historic area that you were talking about, and then about a mile north is, we call it our North Campus.
Yeah. We've talked to a bunch of folks on the podcast that are managing university settings or college settings, and it's a unique setting. And I don't know that I've ever really talked to anybody that hasn't truly enjoyed the opportunity to work on a kind of, and you and I spent some time recently together, and it just feels like family. You guys seem to really have this great true passion for your campus and your university setting, and the students that come through that setting. It's kind of a neat culture that you've built, and I think you live that culture pretty nicely. Is that a fair assessment of how you live on this property?
It is. I mean, that's being a small school. We're 2,500 students, so you quickly will certainly get to know the staff quickly and a lot of professors. And being a small school, you start to get to know the students one way or the other. So it's big universities have their pluses as well, but we're here at Moravian, and it feels like a community here for sure.
How do you describe Moravian as a university? I mean, why do people come to Moravian? Where do they go from Moravian? I mean, give us a little a feel for the life of a Moravian student.
Well, our biggest program here is our nursing program. There's a waiting list to get into it, and because of that, now the university's grown into a lot of the health sciences. So you can get degrees, graduate degrees, and even doctoral degrees in sports medicine, which is a unique program there, because the idea our president had was we want the students to learn, but also get the experience of practical learning. So the building they're in, they have their classes, and then they go right to a St. Luke's outpatient facility and actually work with the patients right in the building.
St. Luke's is a local hospital here in the Lehigh Valley of Eastern Pennsylvania. So there's an internship back and forth between the university and the healthcare system.
Yeah, so with us, we're a liberal arts school, but we're starting to branch out more into the practical sciences and everything, where it's hands-on teaching. So they're doing behavioral sciences and, like I said, sports medicine programs to branch out. And there's definitely a need out there for that. So we're in a good place right now.
Moravian has a very strong reputation as a school, and certainly in this area, and I would think across the country. And if anybody has a child of college age, Moravian usually pops up on the short list to certainly around here as a real good place to go. I have a lot of friends and neighbors that are Moravian graduates. Of course, we're local, but Moravian draws people from all over the world now, right?
Yes, we have students from across the world. We had a student working for us one summer that was from Nepal.
Wow.
And, I asked him, how did you end up at Moravian? of all the schools to go to, and his father is actually a Moravian minister in Nepal. So, so his father was just thrilled that he was going to Moravian College.
Yeah.
Because, this is where Moravian settled in the United States, and branched out from here into other parts of the country, North Carolina and such. So
I asked you this before we went live, but and I'm going to say again, excuse my ignorance, but what is the seminary? What is the religion that's being followed here?
Protestant, similar to Reformed, Dutch Reformed, or Presbyterian, Methodist.
These were Germans coming over from Germany to set this up?
Nope, just Czechoslovakia is actually.
I'm sorry, you said that too, yeah.
1500s is where it started, and actually we have archives on campus for Moravian Church where they have records that go back to the 1500s. So,
I was just testing you, Randy, see if you remember.
That's okay.
You seem to be a real student of this university. Like I said, when we spoke the other day, I thought it was pretty interesting that you had such a great understanding. What is the difference between a college, and you guys moved to university status in 21, a couple of years ago, or last year, I guess, right? What does that mean to you, and what is the difference between for those of us who don't know that, college and university? I assume it's bigger and grander, but what's it really mean to you?
Well, that's what I thought too, because when it was coming up that we were going to change university, what does that mean? But actually, what it stands for is if you're going to start graduate and especially doctoral programs.
Oh, okay. So college doesn't have a doctoral program?
No, I mean, the exception might be Lafayette College or some of the other larger institutions in the country where they've decided they're going to stay with college because it just fits for them. But so we wanted to expand upon, instead of undergraduates having, offering master's and doctoral degrees.
Yeah. So we're talking semantics to a great extent, aren't we?
It's not size, it's the programs. So we're actually divided in different schools now.
Yeah. Let's talk about what you do there. You've got a pretty big job. Most folks that in the turf industry or in the green industry may not know exactly what the day-to-day is of the gentlemen or women who run the facilities and grounds at a university or even a small college. And you're a relatively small college, but you do everything. You're doing the campus, you're doing around the dorms, you're doing all the sports fields. Is there anything you don't do, and manage on that property of 100 acres, which is pretty substantial?
Well, yeah, it's that, and also responsible for all the roads, the parking lots as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, you got to do that too. So you're stuck there through the winter and here in Pennsylvania when it snows?
Oh, yeah. I just look forward to when the white stuff falls out of the sky.
So you're a proponent of global warming. So the snow stays away and we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. It's a stressful time because, you got to think about everybody and you have students living on campus. Anytime they be walking around and you worry about that one puddle that's frozen over and somebody slipping and falling. But we don't have everything in-house. So I have a small staff that maintain the core campus around our academic buildings. But
how big is your staff?
I have a staff of total of 8, but some of them do other duties. I have a trash and recycling person that goes around.
Ecology.
Yeah.
Right.
But we contract out half of the campus to a company that's been with us for over 20 years.
And what do they do? What's their what do you
so they take care of, they actually do all the mowing on campus.
Okay, so you don't have to mow.
No, I pushed for that for a long time because then that gives my staff an opportunity to work on the details.
Yeah, think about it. If you have 8 people and you're mowing 100 acres or whatever it might be under grass, would you have time to do anything else? That seems like a no-brainer. I assume that's fairly common on small campuses.
Right. And more of them are going that way. They're going to contracting it out. Some of them completely contracted out, which, that's hard when you don't have staff in house to take care of things, but all the athletic fields are outsourced. But my staff will do detail work. They're out there aerating right now and seeding. So
The athletic fields?
yeah, I like
Yeah.
to keep that in house, to keep an eye on it and make sure, and just, odds and ends details. But
So let's talk about the sports fields. Just stay on sports. What do you guys, how many acres of sports fields and what are they?
they're 9 acres, include 2 artificial fields.
Sorry.
That's, it's, one,
That's for
one
another
of the
thing.
things that come with it.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, but baseball, softball field, a practice field for football, and actually another practice field was a grass field hockey field, which presented its own challenge trying to keep a grass field for field hockey short enough for them.
Yeah, I bet.
But
When did you go plastic on? I know you and I walked past one of those fields the other day. When did you go plastic on those 2 fields?
The first field was a football field that was put in 2007. And then has since been replaced a couple of years ago. And then a field that was in the center campus, which was one that I worked really hard at to get it, the turf coverage, that went artificial 7 years ago.
So let's talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind. What happened there? I mean, how did you lose the battle? And I think I'm mimicking your words there. How did you lose the battle on turf over plastic?
Well, the big proponent was because we were bringing back men's and women's lacrosse.
Okay, so usage.
Yeah, so it was already a soccer field, and that wasn't so bad. It's in the center campus, so there's a lot of other activities, including commencement on it. So, bringing that back with lacrosse and, both seasons, and actually it's lined for field hockey. So there's 5 different teams using that field. And really it made sense, because of the amount of use it gets, but it kills me when it changed. I'm the kind of person where maybe people think I'm a little odd, but I actually cut a piece of sod out and took it home with me before they tore it all
A little
up.
Sentimental, are you?
Yeah, so I can
Good for
stand
you.
on it at home and say, well, at least I still have some of it left.
And you can go back and say, see, you could have had grass if you had done it right. Now, could you have, if given the opportunity and the budget, could you have maintained that as a grass field?
I think with the program that we built for the athletic fields, I'm 99% confident we could have made it work.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, your passion for this is very obvious. I remember walking past this with you the other day and almost like you were going to, break down and cry over this thing. But, I think a lot of people feel that way, obviously. I mean, and then if you run the numbers, does it really make sense? Right. I get the reason why they do that. And I think we all do in this industry, but there's a lot of folks that we've had here on the podcast that have truly advocated for, natural grass. And obviously, we're all going to do that for a lot of good reasons, but you have 2 fields that are artificial.
Yes.
And the other field is not on the center of the campus. It's the football field.
Yes.
It's the main football field. How big is your football program?
How big is, it's like any other small school. I mean, we're Division III. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's the big rival?
Muhlenberg.
Of course, another local school. Let's talk about, you and I went around campus the other day, and you have become a big believer in biological soil management, and you've done some homework, that surpasses a lot of what I've done over the years. But it was fascinating having the chance to really walk the campus with you, and you showed us an area that you'd been working on pretty diligently. Then we went down to an area that you were just starting to kind of transition. Talk about how you got into that concept. I mean, obviously, it's one that we've advocated for 35 years here at EarthWorks, and I know you have been a supporter of ours. But but what kicked that off? What set it off in your head that, hey, maybe this does make some sense?
Well, when I walked on the campus and saw the condition of the athletic fields, there was a lot of bare
14
soil.
years ago.
Yeah, almost 14 years ago,
Yeah.
bare soil and just, would not drain. So I knew we could do better with this. And so actually through someone in Dave Hunley from Fisher and Son,
Right. Good
already
friend of ours.
working with him.
Our
as a
bass
spot.
player for the EarthWorks band, by the way, it's playing this weekend. Sorry, I had to throw a cheap pitch in.
That's okay. Talked with him and he said, you know what, I think, because I also wanted to go organic if we could. And so he suggested going to Soil First Academy. So you were going to be talking at a local golf course. So I signed up, went, and it was.
I remember that.
Yeah, so it was everything you were saying was exactly what I was hoping for, to hear. So we were taking soil samples. This was in the fall. Came back to see what the results were. Our pH was like a 7.5.
Driven by what? Do you remember back then?
It just.
If I recall correctly, you were high magnesium.
Yes.
And had a fairly slug of calcium in there. So, but there was a big imbalance, and this is going to get me into a lot of trouble because I get called all sorts of nasty names when I talk about balancing soils. But you're a great example of that. High CEC soils where balancing soils actually works, and I know you and Dave work pretty closely together to get your soil chemistry right. Which is what we've advocated, is just if we can get the soil to flocculate a little bit by just opening it up, now you have an opportunity to get biology to work. And that's pretty much what you guys did for a number of years, right?
Well, it was hard in the beginning, that pH and fighting it with that soil and the compact soil.
Yeah.
It took about 6 years to turn around. It was gradual, but 6 years, when you look at it, it's not that long. I mean,
it's long when you're a salesman, Randy, and you got to convince somebody that, hey, we can make this work in 6 years. It's a great sales pitch. Right. It makes a lot of people that think they're smarter than we are, that this is all a bunch of hocus pocus. But you're a living example of how you were able to make this change. And it's pretty striking when you walk that campus.
Right. So we were able to get the fields where we wanted them, and now it's a matter of when we do the soil tests, we're just tweaking it a little bit.
Yeah.
Something might be just a little bit out of balance, but the pH is around a 6.2. The turf is so thick now, almost from day one, we don't do any weed control on the fields. We don't do any blanket spraying. If we do any, it's spot treatment, because that turf is so thick, and actually the soil is so healthy that I was resistant to the beginning, but we put growth regulator down just to slow that grass down,
Right.
Because otherwise we have hay fields out there.
Yeah. Is this across the campus or just the athletic field?
Just the fields, but then 3 years ago I wanted to expand the program on the campus, and that's what you saw when you came out recently. Is working at it and improving that soil. Where the best example I can give now, Joel, is after the summer we went through with the dry spell that we had, that our fields, our grass on campus has come back where it didn't even look like we had any drought. And it's because of the program we're running. I mean,
well, what was interesting, Randy, I came out and visited you and pulled some samples 3-4 weeks ago, and then and for those of you who are not in this area, in eastern Pennsylvania, I don't remember your numbers, but you were 90 days without rain during June, July, August for the most part. The East Coast, and certainly here in the Mid-Atlantic, we went through a very horrible summer, drought and very hot and dry conditions. I remember standing in the quad with you, pulling samples and looking at some of the sections on that quad that were clearly struggling because of the heat and because of the drought. And then I came back to visit you again a couple of weeks later. We had one really good rainstorm, and I walked up to that quad, and you and I were standing there. I said, Randy, look at the difference that this quad has appeared. I mean, it just came back in one big rainstorm. I mean, it was a pretty healthy rainstorm of an inch or two, and the first one of 90 days, but to have that level of recovery is a great tribute to the work that you're doing there. And when I said that to you, I could just see your face light up, and it was really very clear to you, obviously, and as an outsider, having been there once, seen it kind of weak, and then big rainstorm, and boom, it bounced back. That says a lot to me.
Well, with the fields, we very rarely put any water on them over the summer. We had to this summer, but
I bet.
The coaches, when they come back in the fall and they see that they're back to lush and beautiful, it's just, I feel confident now that they'll just rebound, because again, we've improved the biology of the soil to the point where it's resilient. It comes back.
Yeah, you go into dormancy later and come out of it a lot earlier than most. Let's talk about the whole campus situation. One of the things you and I were talking about, we have a dear mutual friend, Kevin Mercer, who's at Denison University. He's been on the podcast with me, and I've known forever. And I remember Kevin was really the first to really share this with me, but doing this level of agronomy, if you will, really enhances the value of that property from a visual standpoint. And I know Kevin uses this pretty heavily, and you had said, you're very much the same way. It's a big recruiting tool. And I remember a couple of years ago when my son was going, to start to college, and we were driving around looking at campuses, and we looked at a lot of the local schools here in Pennsylvania, and some of them were just, I wouldn't want to send my child to a school that looked like that. And obviously I'm biased, and I'm a horticulturist, and I look at turf and trees and flowers, but I remember walking around and listening to parents, and I heard a number of people unsolicited saying, yeah, this doesn't, it's not very pretty here. And then we'd go to another campus that was obviously well taken care of, like yours. And you could just see the difference in the recruiting ability of that property. When you have a property that looks very nice to mom and dad, when they're bringing their, child around and leaving them there for, their formative years. So it's pretty interesting to see how that has become popular in the small school district. And I would assume you probably have had a lot of compliments as well, because the place looks great.
Yeah, credit to my staff, but the reality is, anybody walking on the campus, what are they going to see first? They're not going to see inside the classroom.
Yeah.
They're going to see the outside. So if it looks unkept, they're going to think, well, how is their dorm room going to be, or how is the food in the dining hall? So it's that first impression that's going to hit them. So we got to do what we need to do to make that first impression the best it can.
So let's talk a little bit about what you and I did a couple of weeks ago, which was really kind of cool for me. You invited me onto campus, and we worked with one of your professors, an environmental science professor, and I had the opportunity, and I'm grateful for it, and had a lot of fun doing this, speaking to this environmental science classes about basically what you were doing and the reason why behind what you were doing, and biological soil management. And I talked a little bit about regenerative agriculture and about, these were environmental science people. One of the things that I talked about was how soils can really be a driving force in regenerative agriculture and in carbon sequestration. And it was interesting watching these faces in this classroom that you set me up with, and more importantly, the passion that you and your professor had on this subject matter. And I was just a pawn in the thing, and I got a chance to share some stories, but it was kind of neat how you got involved in the classroom. And got a chance to share with these folks that are environmental science people, majors, and maybe, who knows, one of those folks in that class could become the next, could change the world in some fashion or another. Probably not from anything I had to say, but maybe by seeing it on your campus. But it was kind of neat how you got involved in that. Is that common? Are you doing this more and more?
I am. It started a long time ago, I guess 12 years ago, wanted to get a tree inventory started on campus. And one of the ways we're wrangling to get money to get it started was the idea of getting students involved. So student government at that time helped fund it. And
Oh, really?
ever since then, the ecology class will meet with me and a representative from the tree service that we use for the tree inventory. They'll do a presentation in the lab period or lecture period of the class, and then the lab period, which is about 3 hours, we'll go out on campus and they'll actually inventory some trees. They'll learn about the trees and how we take care of them, protecting them. And I'll talk about how we use the EarthWorks materials, products to help improve the health of the trees, so that a lot of them, they're getting their first experience with, learning how we take care of a campus. And then that evolved into the idea of, well, why don't we, this is biology students, what about chemistry students? Because of what you do with EarthWorks and your program it's chemistry. And
it is chemistry. And I hated chemistry in college. Most of us did.
Right. So, I mean, let's introduce it into the chemistry class. So environmental chemistry students, and thank you again for meeting with them.
Absolutely.
And sharing with them what work you put into the products that you produce and how we go about using them on campus. So again, we started with Kiss the Ground, and we wanted the students, professor, to share that with the students so they could see that as a macro approach to what we're talking about, and then introduce what we're doing on campus on a micro level so that the students see that, at least at Moravian, we're not going to change the world, but we're trying to do something, do it the right way here.
Yeah.
And
well, you might change
them.
the world. You just inspire one person, and
right.
Who knows what could happen. Let's talk a little bit about Kiss the Ground. For those who don't know what Kiss the Ground is, it's a book turned into a documentary that's on Netflix, and it profiles regenerative agriculture and a number of folks that we're very friendly with here at EarthWorks. In fact, my founder, Jerry Bernetti, probably would have been very involved in this if he had survived. And we got to see a lot of the folks that we've known for a long time, and people that influenced Jerry and then ultimately influenced me and the direction that EarthWorks has taken. But it was interesting that, they all studied it, or they all watched it, and we talked about it, and they got to see, some of the changes. There was a great example there where Gabe Brown, a farmer in the upper Midwest, was about to lose his farm and had lost it to hailstorms, I guess. And the soil was just horrible. But there's a great picture in that where he stands on the edge of his farm in a semi-arid marketplace. And the farm to his left, his neighbor, is basically barren, and his is green and lush, all because, he has started to manage his soil and provide carbon back into the soil and provide an opportunity for soil biology to proliferate, which is exactly what you're doing. One of the interesting things in the little class that that I worked with you on was when we went around the campus, you pulled plugs, soil probe plugs out of a good area, and then you pulled them out of the bad area. I was fascinating. There was a couple of students there that were like really fascinated by looking at that, and I could just see their eyeballs, get bright, and that good area where you could see that nice, dark, rich soil, and it was easier to stick the probe in. Now we'd just had a rainfall, but we went down to a lower part of your campus, and it was not such a pretty soil. Grass wasn't so good. I've actually showed some of those pictures on some of my turf talks, and it was harder to get in. And then you could see them, discovering, oh, that's what they're talking about. That's what Randy has been doing here. And it was fascinating that you were able to help them discover some of these things that you've been doing. I'm amazed that, you just told us that it was 6 years in the making. Actually, I'm not amazed, because sometimes it's 6 years to really start to see that happen. But I hope you got the same reaction that I got out of their reactions to what you've been doing.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, this, when I meet with students, takes me out of my comfort zone. I'd much rather be doing what I need to do behind the scenes, but it's that reaction of the students when you said their eyes light up and they're getting it and engaged. it wants me to continue to do that, and again, inspire them to maybe go out and hopefully change the world.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? No, I'm surprised you say that, because you were actually very comfortable with them, but and you could, the key thing in teaching anybody anything is sharing with them your passion. And that, I will say, my friend, you did extremely well. I mean, the one thing that they certainly walked away from is that, man, this guy that manages our property is certainly passionate about this. And if they didn't get it, they were sleeping, and there might have been one or two sleeping, but there were certainly a lot. I mean, I got a great kick out of one of the students, this young lady that was playing with the soil. She was looking for earthworms and found one, I think. So I thought that was really very cool that, that they were getting that kind of exposure. Let's talk about the tree survey, because I know you spent a lot of time on this, and I find it fascinating. I mean, give me, you're actually not calling a survey. You had a different term for that, but talk about the work you did with the trees on campus.
Okay, so it's a tree inventory.
Tree inventory, thank you.
Yeah. So the same thing is, we wanted to know what we had on campus so that I can manage it. But again, getting the students involved with it, they actually have access to the inventory. So they use it in their classes with all the different data that it's in there. And we do a program where anything we treat is done systemically or with drench. So when it's not out there haphazardly spraying on the campus. And again, emphasizing, the one thing that we really emphasize is building that health of the soil. I share with the students that the mycorrhiza that are a symbiotic relationship with the trees, there's a whole network under the ground. Those roots are interconnecting and they're communicating with each other. So I'd say to students, when I'm walking around, I'm not so much thinking about what's above me and I'm looking what's beneath my feet, what's going on down there. If that foundation is solid, then everything else will build upon it. It's easier, makes my job a lot easier, and my staff's.
And that class that I spoke to, I think they were also encouraged to watch that documentary. I always get this wrong. I want to call it Fabulous Fungi. I think it's close to that, if not.
Fantastic Fungi.
Fantastic. I always get it wrong. The Fantastic Fungi, which is available on Netflix. It's truly eye-opening, and anybody in the turf or green industry should really watch this. It gets a little weird at the end, a little psychedelic, but the part of the mycorrhizae and how the trees communicate. One of the things in that documentary that just stuck in my head was how a parent tree can find an offspring miles away and communicate through that. And they say, mycorrhizae is both the communications network, and the pipeline to all these other plant material. But it's a fascinating documentary. It gets into a little, psilocybin mushroom conversation, which I guess is why, your professor wasn't allowed to really promote it, but just encourage them to watch it. Couldn't play it on campus, but it still talks about how this network goes. What was the motivation of the tree inventory? I mean, how did it start?
It started because I wanted to know what we had and
you started it.
Yeah. But I had also a professor, biology professor that he's now since passed away. Great relationship, and we became good friends. That he actually allowed this to percolate and for us to work together. But it took a few years to get that off the ground too. And since then, other professors have come along for biology. They're continuing that legacy. So one of the things with that is I asked the professor, when I'm not around, nobody's around, ask the students if this is something we should do again next year. And every year it's been a resounding yes, continue to do this. So I'm hoping the same thing with the chemistry students. They were going to do a reflective paper on your time and mine with them. So I'm encouraged. I'll be bugging you again to come out and speak.
Please, I'd love
students. To. So yeah, it's great to, again, as I've said before, to get the students out there and seeing the campus and how how we're maintaining it and trying to do the right thing out there.
So talk to me about the inventory. How do you know how many trees? I mean, you have documented every tree on property?
Not every tree. We have 1,200 trees inventoried, and I'd say with the forested areas that we haven't inventoried, we might have 2,000 on campus.
Okay.
The one thing with keep talking about trees is that we have a lot of mature trees on campus. We have a lot of shade, as you saw. So that being a challenge with growing turf underneath the trees or anything really, as well as it's a college campus. So we have students roaming all around, activity. We had a lot of working against us. So, but again, anybody walks our campus and you walk underneath those mature trees and there's a lush lawn there.
Yeah.
Again, I keep coming back to it's that health of that soil there. Because in the beginning, I didn't with the athletic fields, we didn't want to just throw grass seed down and hope that it grew, and same with just dumping nitrogen and it's just going to revert back to what it was. I mean, the best answer I can give is we're not doing anything special here. You know, that it's nature. We're just looking at what nature does, and nature does it best, and we're just replicating
following her.
Yeah. So,
which is kind of cool. So what's come out of the inventory? I mean, what has it done for you?
Well, certainly one thing that was eye-opening is finding out just how many varieties of trees we have, species of trees on campus.
Were you a tree guy before you started this? Were you, able to whip off all the species? A lot of guys can do that.
But I could, but I've become known around campus as the tree guy, so
there you go.
In fact, our marketing department did an alumni magazine this summer, just featured on the trees. It was the largest article, and
cool.
covers what we're doing with both with the students and also the program with maintaining the trees, and gotten a lot of feedback from alum and people about it. So,
what's the most prolific tree on the property?
It's neck and neck with oaks and maples.
Okay. Do you have a lot of sycamores on property?
We do. We have quite a few on main campus. And then we have some rare trees like a Franklin tree. And
what's a Franklin tree?
So if you give me the time, I'd like to share. So one of the trees I learned when I was taking plant ID was this tree called the Franklin tree that back in 1700s, John Bartram, who was a botanist from Philadelphia, was down in Georgia, and he came across these trees growing along the river, brought some back to Philadelphia, and he was great friends with Benjamin Franklin, so he named it after Franklin. They went back a few years later to get more of the trees and couldn't find any. So they've disappeared from nature, never been found since. And we were fortunate a number of years ago to get one on our campus. So
you brought one in, or you identified one?
We brought one grower hat to put on campus, just because it's got a great story and it's unique. And then
very Philadelphia.
Yeah, and then I found out afterwards that because our campus is so old, one of our buildings was used for a hospital during the Revolutionary War. Benjamin Franklin was on our campus, so I usually
he was everywhere.
And so when I give tours, I say, we're planting a tree in his honor, and hell, he might have walked right by where it's planted.
Yeah,
so
exactly. What is a Franklin tree? Do you know? What's this genus and species?
Its full name is Franklinia altamaha. So,
is it related to any other tree that we know, or is it really truly its own unique species?
It's pretty unique. I mean, I'd say close to maybe a silver bell tree or something like that. But it's pretty rare.
Oh, you got to show me this next time I'm over.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of what other in the inventory process. I mean, obviously, some of this is to protect the trees. I'm assuming, right. And others is just simply to know what you have. I mean, has it helped you in making decisions or changed any program things, knowing the varieties and the volume of trees that you have there? I mean, what's the practical implication of the inventory?
Well, one advantage is it gives the asset value of the tree, a dollar value to it. And so we have about $9 million worth of asset in trees. So,
really?
Yeah. So when I'm going and proposing to do tree work on campus, I'll be asked, well, that's a lot of money. But then, given we're looking at the safety issues of the tree, making sure that there's not any hazards. But if it's a mature tree and we lose it, just think about that loss in value to the campus. I mean,
and that would transcend almost anybody in our industry, a golf course, certainly a campus. I mean, having that level of asset, and then, if you're talking about a $9 million asset and you want to spend a few $1,000s on tree service, I mean, that's not a bad investment to maintain that level of investment on property.
It definitely helps me, because then I can spend that money and they understand why. And like I said, we have tree protection in the elm. That was not cheap to get that done, but it's, ensuring that that's there. And what I tell everyone is there's been a long list of people before me to maintain this campus, and hopefully there'll be a long list after me. But while I'm here, I'm going to try and my staff to do the best we can to make sure these trees are around for everyone to enjoy after us. So,
have you lost any significant trees since you've been there?
We lost a large ash, and it wasn't because I'm an ash borer. A thunderstorm came through, and unfortunately, a large portion of it came down, and it was center campus, so we had to have it taken down. But one thing with being aggressive with maintaining the trees and the proper program is we do get thunderstorms come through, and most often we just get little branches that fall. So I hope that's, the reason why we're doing the program we are, that we don't have major damage from storms.
If you don't mind me asking, is there a budget for tree maintenance on campus?
There isn't.
Good. So
I have a budget. I have a budget, but to kind of answer your question in a different way is one of the things that was hope of mine. I figured it'd take till I retired is getting an endowment set up for our trees.
Oh, cool! Great idea.
Yeah, and I was like. A surprise to me just before Christmas last year, one of our faculty, economics professor, her and her husband decided they were going to start an endowment. So put forth quite a bit of money and started it. And Christmas came early for me with that.
I bet.
So now we have an endowment started to raise money to preserve the trees, on campus. Yeah.
This is all designed for preservation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the money would go towards maintaining the trees, whatever is needed.
Is that under your tutelage, the budget?
Yeah, I work with the business office because they ultimately manage the accounts. But yes, it's available money for us to do what we need to for the trees on campus.
Is there politics in the tree inventory? I mean, people get rid of some trees and don't want to get rid of others. I mean, what's the angst when it comes to a tree inventory?
It hasn't. In the beginning, Joel, when we were taking a tree down, we'd get an email in the department from a professor saying, well, why are you taking this tree down? Or, concern. So I felt obligated as a person responsible for the trees to reach out to the professor, explain why the tree was coming down. We were just not taking them down just because we didn't like it. There was a reason behind it. So to educate the community. And as time's gone along, and because we're working with students and professors and see that the trees, we're very rarely taking a tree down, they understand that I think they understand that we're doing the right thing here with the program that we're doing.
who determines the value, the asset of a particular tree? How do you come up with, this tree here is worth, $10,000? I mean, where does that number come from?
That's a good question. So it's based on the International Arbor Society and American Arbor Society. So they came up with criteria that is necessary to determine that value. So that's what's part of the program.
So anybody on a campus or on a golf course could go and do this type of inventory, and through justifiable means, come up with an evaluation of what their tree assets are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Every tree that we put in, if we put a young tree in, once I plug it into inventory, it'll put a value to it. So
is the cost of trees, and this is a stupid question coming from me, but is the cost of buying a new tree, I mean, that's got to be pretty steep these days. I can't imagine they're not going up in price a lot to replace something.
Well, if we're starting with just a small tree, no, it's not that expensive. What the challenge is getting them. Red maples, very hard to get. Some of the lindens or whatever, because think back to 2008. And when the economy tanked, a lot of growers either went out of business or they were scaling back what they were putting in the ground. Now, this many years later, there's not as many available. So it's
so supply chain has affected the tree industry, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically.
It's affected everything.
Right. Yeah.
That's crazy talk, but yeah, that I hadn't even thought of that from that standpoint. That it would be hard to even find things. Do you ever bring in large trees? If you were to lose a tree, would they invest in a mature tree and bring that in? I mean, or would they basically just start from normal 10-20 foot tree?
Well, I'm going to brag. Fortunately, we've had that situation. We've had a large tree that we needed to replace. Again, because of how well we're maintaining the trees, or trying to, that we're not getting loss of trees on campus.
Good.
And more so when we have projects going on and they're doing construction near tree roots. One of the things that really push for is getting as much as we can protect the roots, but if they get damaged, to come back in there and treat the roots. One of the things is the C3. We'll use that on the around the roots as a drench to help the tree recover, or at least prevent decline as much as we could. So that's one thing that we do more often than anything is
just as a drench, just to keep that tree root going.
Right.
What's your typical program to maintain the trees? I mean, I know you use a lot of C3 in a drench, but what other things are you doing?
Well, we're using ArborJet products for injection. So we have the gun to inject them, and it's literally a program throughout the year. So we'll be doing emerald ash borer or spotted lanternfly, but we're also doing iron injections, because of the poor soil we have. Yeah. And a variety of treatments. Did you have
a big lanternfly problem last year, or
we
this
did
year?
Last year, about 3 years ago, you can find them almost everywhere, and the last couple of years, it's fortunate they've declined. But since we're talking trees, we actually have a tree heaven on South Campus. It's the third largest in the state. So
what's that?
So tree heaven is an invasive tree. It'll grow in the cracks of pavement. It's really just a garbage tree, but because it's such an old tree, I'm actually, we're treating it to protect it and save it. So it's,
really?
Can't believe that we're doing this, but that's,
So you got to let the punk trees hang out, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's pretty funny. I'm sure that's not uncommon to a lot of folks that have those kind of issues. Yeah. What's the biggest headache on managing the property from a horticultural, grounds management standpoint?
Well, to be honest, it's all the people on campus walking around, not being able to get stuff done. But without the students, I wouldn't have a job. So
yeah, exactly.
We got to work hand in hand. I'll say this: when we went through COVID and we were shut down, we always said it'd be nice if we didn't have students here. And then COVID came and we were shut down.
And you didn't have students.
And we were here and we were working full staff, but it was a ghost town. And we're like, well, we're getting a lot done. We did projects we normally wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But we want them back, and we look forward to them coming back. And
see, be careful for what you wish, because it might happen in a really horrible way.
Right.
It's kind of funny how things like that can happen. What were you able to get done when everybody was gone?
We tore up paved areas there. We did a lot of lawn renovation. We aerated and top dressed and seeded that. Again, if people were around, we wouldn't have been able to do that as much. So we took full advantage of that time.
Was your budget restricted when they were gone?
It wasn't. And
good. What about sports fields? I mean, obviously they weren't being used.
They weren't. We were business as usual, maintaining them. And a credit to our director, because in the very beginning we were home. And after a couple weeks, she said, "You know what? Come back to campus. We want you here. We want to show that we're needed here working." And so we were back full staffed and working.
How long were you gone?
We were only gone a couple weeks, where I know some of my peers, they were gone for months, and I really feel for them what they came back to, what they had to do to get their campus.
Can imagine, right?
Weeds 4 foot high and grass, almost as high, and a lot of challenges. So we had it easy.
Yeah,
for sure.
It still must have been. I mean, I remember those first few weeks and thinking that, this is going to have to end tomorrow, and this can't go on. And then I started realizing, how are we going to survive? I mean, you start to really think weird things under those circumstances. That's actually how this podcast started. Was, we didn't know what else to do other than get on, a Zoom call, which nobody even knew what a Zoom call was before COVID hit. But now we're able to, stay in touch and keep the conversation going, which is good. Well, I hate to tell you this, and this is typical of what happens when we talk to folks. We've run up against an hour. What projects do you have coming down? Anything exciting that is new and different or changing?
More major lawn renovations on campus. We're going to have to hold off till next summer. We were hoping to do it this summer, and good thing we didn't because of the weather we had.
Yeah, that would have been horrible, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that my staff and I are proud of is we have a greenhouse that we grow our own native plants in. So we're doing a lot of that so that we can put them into beds as we're renovating them and adding the EarthWorks products to them to improve the soil. So,
are you doing all the annuals and all those things? Is that your staff, or are you hiring that out?
No, we do majority of that in-house.
Okay. Your spring flowers are always spectacular. Like I said, I've come to your campus many times just to drive around, because the buildings are spectacular, but knowing now what you've been doing and knowing that property, it's really quite an enjoyment to drive around and just kind of look at how neat it is. That whole historic Bethlehem area is really a quite nice place to hang out in. So, Randy, I got to thank you for all your support for all these years. Thanks for having me over a few weeks ago. I've been enjoying my beer stein. Thank you very much. And hopefully I have a chance to get back over, and who knows, maybe we influence somebody somewhere along the line to get them to think about what happens under our feet. But keep talking to them about mycorrhizia and about stuff that they don't understand, and maybe something will click, and you're the right guy to do it. So I encourage your passion and hope that you can keep working with these guys. And I can't thank you enough for spending an hour here with me today as well.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you. And by the way, that is the EarthWorks podcast. If you're not a subscriber, please be one, so you can hear about cool things that we're going to do and interesting people that we're going to have. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's been listening to our podcast over the last 2.5 years. Thank you.